What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you can get notified for any upcoming new daily videos where we talk about the financial revolution that is happening and how to make better decisions to absolutely crush this thing for the rest of this year and definitely going into next year. Today, what we're talking about is quite a weekend we had with Bitcoin Cash, with Bitcoin. What I want to do is I want to walk through this, but I want to do it in a little bit of a different way than everyone else is doing it. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details because there's plenty of people that will do that, talking about hash power and blocks. Like, that's cool, and you should definitely learn about that. But for this channel, I think it's a lot more helpful to look at the big picture and help you guys see a story that I see that will inevitably lead to a better decision about what you should buy and where you should put your focus, if anything. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we're here for. That's what we're trying to do, is be a part of the crypto community, help the coins we believe in, obviously, but also to make the right decisions and ride the wave in the right way. So we're going to walk through everything as best as we can through that lens. It's very exciting. Weekend was something else. I always try to take the weekends off for this exact reason. And by the way, thank you guys for 50,000 subscribers. It's pretty insane. We've got like 20 million views or something, almost to 1 million podcast downloads. So we're rocking. It's great. Let's look at Bitcoin. So I'm looking at the BTC USD 60-minute chart. And what happened is that Bitcoin was seeing a pretty significant dump. I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe 25%, I believe, was the final top to bottom retracement. And it leveled off right around 5,600. Now, as many of you know, if you've been watching, 49 is where my alerts and buy order interest is set. I am going to keep it there for now. I still think that there's something going on here, and going into the holidays is always an interesting time. I think that that's a really important thing to remember, is that while this is 24/7 and it's a global market, any sort of institutional money is not. They work 9 to 5 or from 6:30 to whatever the hours are that most banks will operate. And so whenever you go into the last 6 weeks of the year, at least in the United States, but this is typically a global phenomenon, most activity, most business deals, most decisions are not done. They wait until Q1 to get started. So that's going to be really interesting to keep in mind. If you're waiting for all this new money to pour in, realize that during the holidays is not when people are necessarily thinking about that from an institutional standpoint. So that's something to keep in mind. That's also why I think that this price is, it's just too much up and down. It's too volatile for me to see a lot of stability. So my buyers are in place, or I should say my alerts are in place, my buying intent. So we're gonna stay there, which is the big question. The next thing that I would look at is I'm in trading view, right? You can do this, do a Fibonacci retracement, which I get it. And if you run a Fibonacci retracement, this is very loosely speaking, for this current trend, the 35.17-ish level, and you take it up to the wick, I should say, up at right around 7,900, the high 78s. And these are not exact. I didn't zoom in or anything. I'm just trying to paint a loose picture here. You can see that a lot of the chart here bounced off of these particular trend lines. Now, the current trend, you can never really get a good sense until the trend is over of what happened. But on this retracement, you can see that it bounced off of this 50% retracement line, which was right around 5,700. That is actually a pretty good retracement, right? 50% is, that's a solid pullback. And now the fact that it happened so quickly is what it is, but there's a lot of volume there. So for you guys, this is better than this is, from a risk reward ratio, this is actually not a bad thing. This is like something that definitely makes me look at 4,900 and take another look at it. And so the other thing you're going to look at is, as this thing comes up, this line up around 6,800, give or take, how much resistance does this have? So we can see that there is a fair amount of support. It was kind of a bounce off of the 50% fib retracement. Now we're looking at this next one up here at 6,800. If this provides a lot of resistance, meaning if the price has a very hard time breaking through that, it may come back down. And then you look at the 6,200 line, you look back at the 5,800, and that's when you get into 51 and so on. But this is for the longer trend. Obviously, we have the volume to keep it up, but that's what you can look at. So the next price to keep in mind, or to look at, 68.50, give or take. If it breaks through that, that's good news for the ongoing bull trend. So we'll keep that in mind, among other things. But let's really dive into Bitcoin Cash, what happened, because I think that's the big story here. So if we scroll out, Bitcoin Cash, we saw just an enormous run over a course of, give or take, 48 hours, where it went from approximately 0.83, and it topped off at 0.42. Now I bought some right around here, which ended up being great. I'm still holding that. I took a little bit of profits, but I'm holding that because I think my personal viewpoint is that I'm always hedging myself. So I would give up immediate profits, because by owning more Bitcoin Cash, it allows me to kind of hedge myself against owning a lot of Bitcoin. Now, some people might not look at hedging in that sense, but that's the way I'm looking at it. Other people, most of you, I would say, are much more interested in getting profits short term. That's why I say you should take your profits at any given moment. When you are building a much larger portfolio and you want to have a little bit more balance to it, and you're okay not taking the immediate profits, I'm willing to own more Bitcoin Cash. I've also just been accumulating it for the last 2 months, as you guys have been seeing on this video. And so I'm just trying to build out a more full position in all of these things. That's the only reason why. But it really ramped up, right? And there was a lot of people talking about how, this is a big pump and dump and everything else. This is what I would tell everybody. Anytime that you see someone making a claim or telling you it's a pump and dump about something like Bitcoin Cash, or any of the claims you were seeing about Bitcoin Cash over the weekend, ask yourself if they can prove it. It may look like it, but do they know Roger or Jihan or somebody in Korea or Miner? Do they actually know? Did they hear from somebody else? Can they see it on the blockchain? Can they see one address doing it all? Can you prove that it actually is that way? Or is it just a very convenient story to rationalize what's happening? This is a very good example of what they call cognitive dissonance, which is when something that you don't want to believe ends up producing a different result than you rationally think it should. And so you create a very rational reasoning behind it. You justify it in a rational way. And so while this could easily have been a huge pump, a coordinated pump, you got to be able to prove it before you can make those claims. Otherwise, you're just getting sucked into the banter that everybody else is putting out there around the particular coins or whatever it may be. So it had a huge run up. And the reason why is because there was a massive volume coming out of Korea, which we talked about on Friday. And then it just continued to go up because it kind of caught the flywheel. You saw all these miners start to come in. And more importantly, just to get into the weeds a little bit, the profitability of Bitcoin Cash was higher than Bitcoin. The thing to note, though, on fork.lol is that this profitability ratio has proven not to always be accurate, because it's becoming clear that a lot of miners are willing to take a loss in order to move a market. You know what I'm saying? So even a rational person, or a libertarian even, would say you'll always mine what's going to make you the most money. But in reality, what we're finding is that people will mine what will make them the most money, but also what furthers their agenda. And those two can get crossed over very quickly. And that's really what happened. Now, Bitcoin Cash is doing a quote unquote hard fork, but that's not a chain split. It's more like an upgrade, the way Ethereum did it. So it's more about how they can adjust the difficulty so that they can switch back and forth between these more easily. So I don't know if that's going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. It's actually happening today. It's supposed to happen today. But as you watch this thing, I am starting to look at this profitability, difficulty, hash rate, and I'm starting to realize that the profitability of this, the short-term profitability for miners, is less important than winning the long-term battle, which we'll talk about in a second with John Mcafee and what he said. So keep that in mind. People are not all completely rational. Profits do not drive all people, especially if you're already making, like these guys are making 50 million a day or something ridiculous. I mean, it's stupid money. 50 million a month. I don't know, whatever it is. I mean, it's insane. And so for them to take a bit of a loss for a few days may hurt, but if it means they can make billions of dollars and have massive influence and have their vision realized in a year, that may be a big piece of it. So while it is good to check all this stuff out, it's easy to get sucked into the details and forget. These are people. These are individuals sitting somewhere, sitting in some room, making these decisions, right? They're emotional people. That's all that it really comes down to. Now, from a product standpoint, Bitcoin, BTC Core has way more people working on it. It's got much more robust code base. It's got way more updates on GitHub, which is the open source repository. Bitcoin Cash has very few people working on it, has not been updated in a long time. It has bigger blocks, the whole thing, right? But remember, that is only one tiny piece of a bigger war that is going on here. And there's a lot of different pieces to this. But if you focus on the block size, on this code's better than that code, if you focus on the one detail instead of the big picture, you can miss what's really happening. Quickly, Bitcoin Gold also spiked. This, in my opinion, was probably more of a pump because Bitcoin Gold really has no credibility whatsoever. It has no support. There's no whatever. So this, when you look at the forks, this may try to ride the wave without any sort of backing. So it's just an interesting data point to compare as you compare it to Bitcoin Cash. Now, let's look at who's behind Bitcoin Cash. We all know that Roger is really the kind of the Bitcoin Jesus. That's self-proclaimed on his part. I'm not saying that, but that's how he sees himself in this revolution. And I mean, if you scroll back to the Coin Mastery videos from August even, this is what we talked about. We talked about this guy, Roger, who's seeing Jihan and he's seeing the Chinese government, and they are all trying to make this bigger vision a reality. And you can see Roger getting more and more active on Twitter, more and more public facing, having more and more conversations. But here's the thing that I think most people are missing. This is just my opinion. When you go on Twitter and you look at, which is where everyone hangs out in the Bitcoin community, you look at the Bitcoin Core, BTC, the original Bitcoin, you look at the conversations they have, and they are talking to each other. They are working within the echo chamber. They are trying to have opinions, have debates. But they are insular. It is within their own world. Roger, in my opinion, is not talking to them. He is talking to the world. He is talking to business owners. He's talking to product owners. He is talking to app owners, like mobile apps. He's talking to website owners. He's talking to everybody who could potentially use Bitcoin, or Bitcoin Cash in this case, as a way to transact revenue. Instead of using Stripe as a payment processor, you start using Bitcoin Cash. That is who Roger Ver is talking to. And so when you look at everything he's doing, obviously there's some infighting and there's some debates and there's some politics that he needs to have. And while he is trying to win some of those debates, what you're going to see and what you're starting to see is he is not talking to those people. He knows that the future of this depends on if he can get big websites or big apps to use Bitcoin Cash. And they start to see it as a transactional currency, a true cryptocurrency, and not a storage of wealth. And so that's what's going on here. You have Bitcoin Core, BTC, who are focusing on the product. They're focusing on the how much it's a better thing, how it's got more developers, and blah, blah, blah. You've got Roger, who's realizing that there's a huge opportunity, and the real vision, quote unquote, of Bitcoin is to be a peer-to-peer payment system, as what the original white paper claims it to be. And he knows that the future, and we'll get into this in other videos, the future of crypto and what's going to win in 2018 are the coins that can get the most transactions dialed, right? The coins that have the most usage, that is what's going to drive the biggest amount of price increase. So he is trying to get more transactions done. And one thing he's doing, whether this is conscious or not, I can't imagine it's not, is that if you guys don't know, in sales, in marketing, in any sort of persuasion environment, the most effective tactic you can use is to identify pain. So if you ever go and hear somebody try to sell you something, or you go into the mall and you look at a product like a massage chair, or shoes, or anything, right? The most effective pitches will point out how life isn't good without this yet, and how much better it will be down the road. This is what Roger is doing. He is talking to people and saying, this isn't good because there's because the transaction fees are too high. And lo and behold, in the last 48 hours, how many posts did you all see on Facebook and Twitter? People being like, man, this transaction time really sucks. I'm waiting 24 hours for my Bitcoin. I can't believe I have to pay like $20 to move my Bitcoin. This is ridiculous. And all of a sudden, Roger is just pressing that pain point. And he knows that not only users, but he knows that is a huge pain point for merchants, for website, and for everything else. So that's a big piece of what he's doing. If this was a political race right now, this guy is running a textbook campaign on how you get people, persuade people to believe that, oh wow, I didn't even know I had this problem. Like, wow, this guy's really gonna make my life so much better. This is what he's doing. Now, along these same lines, I tweeted about this last night. John Mcafee, very interesting character, to say the least. He brought up a really good point. And I think that I tweeted about this because I think that this brings a perspective that is needed within this world, within this community, which is one of business versus crypto, really, right? Like, when you get outside of the rationality and you start to look at the incentive model, that's when things start to change. And he talks about how mining is actually not only an inefficiency of the blockchain tech, about how the model works, it's an inefficiency because it doesn't effectively take into account what I talked about, right? The incentives about people that are greedy or people want to win versus people that will mine the most profitable thing. And so he goes on to explain this in the sense that Satoshi underestimated how much people will want to win in business, how much mining will become a profitable business, and that will bring in a whole new set of emotions that have nothing to do with just running mining equipment and switching it to the most profitable. And so that's why he talks about how I thought this was probably the most poignant. He says, why do all businesses attempt to destroy their competition? It's because beneath the veneer of love, grace, compassion, cooperation, and all the rest lies greed, jealousy, fear, hostility, and the dark host of egocentric motivators that impacts us all. Now, this is very extreme. I don't agree with that definition of what business is all about or has to be, but he brings up a good point, is that Bitcoin is not a we're all in this together, like let's change the world, let's join arms and go take down the banks. I think that it is that to many people, but what it really is this massive financial market that's built on top of products and blockchains. And whether or not you agree that that's a good thing or a bad thing is a different story. But I think at the very least, you have to accept the fact that there are deep incentives for people to win and lose in crypto from a market standpoint. And I think that will continue to be a big deal. And so when you look at this, when you roll all of this together, what does it mean for you? When you look at Bitcoin, when you look at Bitcoin Cash, the question is, well, what's the future look like? I think the answer is, if you believe that Bitcoin Cash and Roger will effectively be able to implement that into transactions, people will start using Bitcoin Cash to pay for things online, in real life, on credit cards, whatever. If you think that is what Bitcoin Cash will, that they will succeed, then you should buy some Bitcoin Cash and go along on it and hold it. If you think that this is going to die and that there'll be better altcoins for it, if you believe in Litecoin or maybe Vertcoin or Stellar Lumens or Ripple, I mean not Ripple, but like the fast, low transaction cost ones, if you think that those are better than Bitcoin Cash, then you should bet on those. And if I could predict the future, I would tell you, I think that Roger is getting some momentum, which is why I personally bought some and own it. So I don't think it would be a bad idea to do it. I don't think it's going to hurt Bitcoin anytime soon because there's just so much institutional support for this. You got to remember, institutional money looks at Bitcoin. They look at crypto. This is the only thing they can buy. They can't invest $30 million into anything unless they do OTC, right? Bitcoin is the only thing on an exchange that they could even theoretically buy some sizable amount of. Otherwise, there's so much slippage, it would just move the market. And they couldn't do it. There's not enough volume. And so for that reason alone, purely from a market cap, from a dominance standpoint, I don't think that BTC is in real trouble anytime soon. Will it go through some tumultuous times in the next month or two? Yeah, I do. I think that's why I'm keeping my orders down here. I think that we're going to see this go nuts, but it's too big. The only time that BTC will really be in jeopardy is when the masses and institutions stop looking at BTC as the de facto thing. And you'll see it. I mean, you'll see other market cap things coming up and getting close to Bitcoin, and then you'll see Coinbase maybe making a statement about blah, blah, blah when they release the Bitcoin Cash in January. If people actually end up buying it more than they sell it, those are all things, but you can react to those. You don't have to necessarily predict them because those are just too big to really try to gauge. So my personal opinion, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to own Bitcoin, but to buy more, I'm going to wait more. I always have my dollar cost averaging running every week. I also own Bitcoin Cash, which I bought down here. So I'm going to wait and see what happens with Bitcoin Cash. If I do buy more, it'll probably be either on a scalp trade or it will be because I get news about Bitcoin Cash that is very bullish. Like they're getting adopted by some by some major website or whatever. Last thing I would encourage you guys to keep in mind is that as this infighting happens, as this debate happens, whenever you see everybody talking about one thing, you always want to be looking to where they're not talking. This is a really good strategy in business and I guess in life, whenever you want to capitalize on an opportunity. And crypto is, you cannot make this stuff up, how good it is in crypto for this. Everybody is focusing on Bitcoin Cash. But what people forgot is that Segwit 2x is not done. It was just delayed. And as this Bitcoin Cash, whatever, falls apart and goes through, or does its thing, and everyone's fighting about it, everyone wants to get pissed off, these Segwit 2x futures, like the volume dropped in half, the price is dropping like crazy. But if in 2 months they decide, wow, this has become such a mess, we really do need to do Segwit 2x because the bigger blocks is a big deal. We need to make Bitcoin a more currency-friendly solution. These Segwit 2x futures are going to go through the roof. This is another way to hedge the BTC bonanza. All right, it's risky because you can only buy them on hit BTC, maybe on Bitfinex, but that's a little bit more difficult with U.S. customers and things like that. But this could easily be a very, very solid bet because everybody's focused somewhere else and they didn't cancel it. It's just delayed. They're going to revisit it at a later time, and they're going to revisit it when they need to revisit it as they would. I mean, there's a lot of people that want this to happen. Keep an eye on that. Not a bad idea. Obviously, I don't like the fact that it's only available on this, and I haven't looked into the wallets and everything where you can store it. But always be hedging. Always a good idea. Last thing, I always think it's interesting to look at the what's going on in the capital markets as it relates to blockchain. I think it's funny. You can read all these stories about how companies, tradable capital market companies, equities, securities, things that are on the stock exchanges, they put blockchain in their name and their stock price goes up by like 60%. It's hilarious. Overstock is a really interesting case study. And if you don't know Overstock, it's kind of like a big e-commerce store, Amazon.com, but for like goods that have too many, they made too much of it or whatever. And what Overstock is thinking about doing is shifting their business model over to blockchain and crypto, right? The CEO, I can't remember his name right now, but he's thinking about doing he's doing an ICO called, I believe it's T0. And this is super interesting because this is a new way where fresh capital, retail capital, right? Like you on E-Trade could go do this, where people could start buy exposure into blockchain. That's not an ETF. It's not the GBTC, DGC fund model. It's not futures markets. It's like it's buying an actual company. The company just becomes a blockchain company. This is super interesting as a way to kind of backdoor your way into crypto. So keep an eye on Overstock. Watch what they do. If they do get into blockchain, what are they using? There's some interesting history about what platforms and currencies that Overstock has used, who the developers are, that you guys should go check out. But I think these could be easy wins. I mean, we all look in, like we're the same thing. Everyone's looking at Bittrex. Not everyone's looking over here on whatever, NASDAQ or New York Stock, wherever these guys are listed. I think they might be on OTC now. I don't know. But nobody's looking over here. And these guys are probably like 200% gain on a stock, but just because it's built on blockchain. Everyone's trying to win on Bittrex. These is a whole new world. So imagine somebody sees Overstock doing this. Guess what's going to happen next? You're going to see a bunch of other companies that say, hey, we're putting 25% of our hardware business into mining. Stock goes up 75%. That's an unbelievable gain. So keep an eye on this. Very exciting times, guys. Overall, I think everybody should own a little Bitcoin Cash, to be perfectly honest. It's not advice. It's just that's what I'm doing. I think everyone should own that as a hedge. I think that Bitcoin, I don't know, dollar cost average, as always. And keep an eye on these Segwit 2x futures. You never know. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of ups and downs. if nothing else, realize this one simple fact of trading, investing, of finance. When everybody is looking one way, most of the opportunity is somewhere else. When everybody's wondering, should I buy Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash? The opportunity may be in Overstock.com OTC shares or in some other transactional current. Like, if everybody's looking one place, look somewhere else. So it's a very simple but powerful strategy for making money. It's worked really, really well. All right, guys. With that, again, thank you for the 50,000 subscribers. I will see you at 60,000. And we're gonna ramp this thing up. If you are interested in that free Bitcoin course, if you already own Bitcoin, this is not going to be anything new for you. But if you have a friend or a family member that you want to buy some Bitcoin, or at least get started, you can go to coinmastery.com/Bitcoin. It'll take you to a page. It's completely free. It's really just a walkthrough, an introduction. The entire goal is to get them to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, get knowledgeable, maybe set up a Bittrex account, maybe buy an altcoin, start tracking their stuff, just get in the game. That's the whole goal. My goal on that is to get 25,000 people to buy Bitcoin. That is my goal. So great seeing you guys. Glad to be back, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace out.